Hello to everyone.
All right. So I am going to do the best I can at navigating all of this, but I'm a one-woman show with one screen right now. So I've got a lot of windows open over here. I think I've met a lot of you. I'm Rachel Gonzalez. I started at Connecticut Humanities a couple of months ago, and I'm helping Cindy out with a lot of the America 250 stuff. So we can go ahead and get started. I've got some updates, and then I'm going to kick it over to Steve to take a look at some of the social studies standards. Did everybody get a copy of the agenda that we sent out yesterday? Perfect. All right, so a couple updates that we've had since our last meeting. So our website is kind of under construction, and we've got a couple of new things added to it. So now we've got a events calendar. I'll put the links up in the chat. So we've got an events calendar that if you take a look at it, there's not a whole lot on it right now, but we are looking to be adding events from all over the state to it. So if you know of anything in your local area and you think that it would be good to put on our calendar, definitely have them submit that form or submit it yourself to get it on our calendar so we can publicize that. And then we're also working on getting all of the local commissions up on our website as well. So we've got those listed on our website too. We only have about 30 or 35 municipalities listed so far for local committee contacts. So you can check it out. If your local area has somebody listed and you're not in touch with them already, then definitely get in touch with them. And if you know of anybody in the local area that is working on a local committee, but they're not listed, definitely let us know that as well. And then last but not least, we are going to hopefully be attending some festivals and fairs around the state this summer and into the fall to get some awareness out about just the commission in general. In order to do that, we need some volunteers. So we're hoping that some of you might be interested in joining us. If you are, we have a sign up genius that has all of the events that we're hoping to attend, some shifts. It'll let you register for those. So that's what we're
Rachel, I
hoping.
hope you noted that there's one name that was
It shows
prominently
up a
noted
lot.
on the list.
Yeah. We really appreciated that, Steve. So Steve is going to be at a lot of these, and then Cindy and I will be at some of them as well. So if you're interested and able and would like to join us, basically we're just going to have a table set up with a tent and some stickers to hand out to folks and just kind of tell people about the commission. So it's going to be hopefully fun and low key, but they are some long days and it's all weekend. So if anybody's interested in joining us for those, definitely love to have you.
Maybe,
And we'll be getting registered for those as we have enough volunteers. So not all of them are finalized yet. Yeah, Bilal?
yeah, I was going to say maybe after this meeting, when we send out a follow-up email, you can provide links to all of this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because it'll get lost for sure. And then one more quick note, our social media has been a little bit quiet thus far, but as we're coming into July 4th, we're looking at expanding our social media presence, communications efforts. So you can definitely follow us on social media, sign up for our mailing list. We're going to hopefully have a lot more updates coming out over the next coming weeks and into the next couple of years too. So those are our updates. Steve, do you want me to pull up the social studies standards to share my screen?
Yeah, you know what I'd like to do first, with your permission, Rachel, is just, I know we do this every meeting, but if everybody could go, what should I ask? What's your favorite color? I've been in a meeting with that. What else? What's your first pet's name? How about just everybody just say something that's interesting in your life? How about that? Or if your life is totally boring and non-interesting, tell us that too. But Deb, can you start us off?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Deborah Schonder. I'm the state librarian, head of the State Library Agency, and I have reached the age in life in which I now have bird feeders that I am actively watching in my backyard. So that tells you if my life is interesting or not interesting.
Deb, my wife, I don't know what this comment is on her, but actually has bought bird feeders that has cameras in them. Do you have those? So you can watch the birds and all
I
that?
haven't done that yet, but this is early days, so we'll see what happens.
You go, okay. Tracy Wilson, who's been a little under the weather, I think. Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for asking. I'm sitting on a new porch that we just got delivered to our house, and it's just delightful out here.
Nice. Ruth?
Hi, everybody. I have a lot of things going on. I don't know if anyone in particular would be of interest.
Ruth, how about first just telling us who do you represent? Who are you?
Sure. Ruth Torres. I am on the board. In fact, I was just elected to be vice president of the Connecticut Humanities Council Board of Directors, and I'm presently at Brown University as the Tribal Community Member in Residence and Student Support Specialist, long name. I am a member of the Schaghticoke tribe in Kent, Connecticut area.
Thank you. Abby Esposito.
Hey everybody, I'm Abby and I teach history at Conard High School in West Hartford, Connecticut. Oh, and if you want something interesting happening today.
As a total neutral, whether that's a good thing or not, but we'll take that.
What's that?
It's a total
What's neutral?
No, you have, I don't know if you know, you have a predecessor on this call.
I
Tracy
do.
Wilson.
I do know. Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Abby.
My interesting fact, I guess, right now is that I'm like stealing internet from a friend because my internet's been out since the weather this past weekend. It ripped a communication cable off my house. So I'm mooching off the internet for a bit.
Kathy?
Oh, hi. Well, I'm the publisher of Connecticut Explored, and I'm working on the fall issue. We just had our summer issue come out with the controversy on John Mason's statues, and we've been getting a lot of feedback on that. All I do is work on the magazine, so I don't have too much else going on.
Kathy, what's better, teaching at CCSU or doing the magazine?
Doing the magazine now. I liked teaching at CCSU when I did it, but I'm over it.
Gotcha. Liz Devine. Liz, we're on mute.
Hi, Abby Esposito. That's what I wanted to say. I know Abby. So I broke my wrist. That's my most exciting thing. Getting ready for my grandson's birthday party. Otherwise, it's been a good summer. I've been hanging out with Tracy on her porch.
Not that it's any of my business whatsoever, but how did you break your wrist?
Well, I fell in, there was like a divot in this garage where the party was, and I was helping my son get ready for his son, so my grandson's party, and I kind of, I went down, and I was protecting my knee and hip, which have both been replaced. Meanwhile, I broke my wrist. So
There you go.
Happens.
Mike, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Mike Kinesis. I've switched over from the Community Engagement Committee to this committee. So I am currently the manager of partnerships and projects at Connecticut Humanities. I work with Rachel, and as of July 1st, I will be the director of digital humanities. So that's one really exciting thing. And the other is in about 3 weeks, I'm going to Ireland again for 2 weeks with my entire family, including my aunts and my son's first trip, and he's 6. So very excited.
Thanks. By the way, Rachel, you have to tell us something interesting did you share something with us? Go ahead. What do you got?
Oh boy, I thought I was off the hook. So I wasn't thinking. Well, let's see. Gosh. You mentioned pets, so that's on my brain. So I've got 2 cats, and we named them Tony after Mark Anthony and Cleo after Cleopatra. And once upon a time, we had Augustus the dog. We called him Gus, but he's no longer with us. So we've got our history-themed pet names.
Cool. My thing is, by the way, my daughter and her husband are here visiting with us for a couple of weeks, and they brought their dog, and their dog and our cat utterly despise each other with every passion in their body. So will be an interesting couple of weeks. Danielle.
I'm Danielle Johnson. I teach at 8th grade at Chippensall Middle School in Bristol. And I'm the AVID coordinator there. And I also, for the last 10 years, have been a variety of roles, but I still work part-time at the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History as a research center assistant. And an interesting thing, well, I've been 7 days out of school, and my school has no AC, so I'm very happy about that. But in 2 weeks, I am going to Harvard for a teacher institute on a scholarship through a program through their the Democracy Center called Past to Present, looking at slave narratives and creating lessons and working with teachers across the country, doing stuff with slavery, all the way from slavery to Reconstruction. So I'm super excited, and Harvard is flipping the bill. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Matt Farley. Hi, folks. I feel like I need to first give a shout out to Abby because I feel like that's the trend if you know Abby. So hi, Abby. Matt Farley with Campus Compact. So we do higher ed civic engagement work. I think congratulations, teachers. You made it. I do also want to acknowledge that. I know it's been a hard year. And the interesting fact that I held on to, Steve, when you were giving options was my first pet was a parakeet named Captain Kirk. And that will let you know how old I was probably at that point. So it was last year. No, back to you, Steve.
Matt, could I just ask, and I know you're not directly, I'm sure you relate to teachers. You know, everyone talks about, in the last couple of years that that high school teachers are stressed, high school. Do you think college folks feel any of that stress, or is that not for them?
Oh, I think everyone's stressed personally right now. So absolutely college. I think if college faculty are engaged, they are stressed at this point with a lot of changes in student dynamics, campus culture. I think there's a lot on the line right now and a lot of external pressure as well on campuses too.
Mm-hmm. Allison.
Hi, are you able to hear me? Okay, good. Hi, my name is Allison Rao. I'm with Connecticut's Old State House. It's my second week here, but I'm the new school programs coordinator. So I'm excited to learn more. And, my exciting thing that's happening is I got this new job. So here I am.
Allison, what were you doing? Were you a teacher before that, or?
I actually just graduated college last spring from Trinity College in Hartford. So I've been kind of worked as with a lobbyist for a few months this spring during the legislative session, and now I'm here, so I'm really excited.
Okay. Wow, my illustrious co-chair.
Bilal Siku. I teach at the University of Hartford. Been there, I think I'm in my 21st year now that I've been at UHart. Nothing interesting. I'm trying to work my way to full professor, so it's just research, writing, and admiring my new printer that I purchased. That's about it.
Well, you're a poli-sci guy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You spend the next hour telling us what's going to happen in the next. No, we'll hold that for a different time, maybe.
Got my crystal ball here working on it.
Right. Sally.
I'm Sally Whipple. I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House. My exciting thing is that Allison is working with us. And one of the exciting things about that is that she came to the Old State House for a 3 branches program when she was in 4th grade. So when you work in museums, you're always trying to figure out, how do we tell the impact over the years of what we do for a student in 4th grade? And it's really impossible to tell. But we not only have Allison, but our first kid governor is now an intern in our office. So it's a great longitudinal study of 2, and I'm taking it for all it's worth because I think it's great.
Jenny. Jenny may not be with us. Jason, can you hear us? What's exciting in your life?
Hey, Steve. Hi, everyone. Jason Mancini, Executive Director of Connecticut Humanities and Vice Chair of the state's 250th Commission. Exciting in my life. Most recently is surviving a kidney stone attack last week. Outside of that, I'm really happy to be getting back to working on a book project on an autobiography, Native American autobiography that I recovered a few years ago.
By the way, those kidney stone attacks are interesting, aren't they?
It's amazing what a grain of sand can do to your body.
Indeed.
In the right spot or the wrong spot.
Jenny.
Hi, I'm so sorry. My internet is so bad. That's why I'm not on camera and I didn't hear, it seems like Steve calling me before. I'm Jenny Hicula Diaz. I also go by JHD. I use they and she pronouns, and I work at the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies as the professional learning coordinator. And I just finished less than an hour ago our CCSS Summer Teachers Institute. So I just glanced through all of the lessons that teachers contributed. We had teachers K-12 today, about 30 teachers involved in writing lessons, using content from the New Haven Museum's exhibits, Shining Light on Truth, which is the exhibit on Yale, New Haven, and slavery, and then also on the Amistad Retold exhibit, and then bringing all the other wonderful resources and knowledge and experience that they had. So I'm really excited to sit down and read all the contributions, and they're going to be available statewide for any teacher to use.
Thank you. Connecticut has recently, actually it was last October, created new social studies standards. They were approved by the State Board of Education, and teachers in various districts are starting to use them. Abby, can you just tell me, have you folks looked at the standards at all?
Yes, we have. Pretty much this whole year, our department has been focusing on looking at our curriculum and starting to align it. Our department, at both schools in town and middle school included, at looking at aligning our courses to the new standards.
Danielle, how about your place?
Yeah, Bristol is doing the same thing. So we are taking our set curriculums and aligning everything. There was a couple of grades, like 8th grade was in the process of being updated. So we waited because we knew the state was in the process of redoing the standards. And so teachers are coming in over the summer. Like I'm going in like in 2 weeks to work on stuff. So they kind of decided based on what we get done this year over the summer, it will either be in full effect this year or next school year. Everything will be like fully in effect with the new standards.
So what we thought would be an interesting activity for you today, for us today, would be not to look at the whole standards, but to look at maybe 2 grades of the standards, just to see. So if we're talking about, we've said 50 times, we want to align the curriculum materials with the standards, without knowing what the standards look like, it would obviously be difficult to do that. So just so you know, the grades that are US third grade remember, this is third grade, is Connecticut history and Connecticut government. And then US history is divided in the standards into 3 grades. 5th grade is American history, from the first humans in North America up to the Revolutionary War. 8th grade is the Revolutionary War up to post Reconstruction America, and high school is from say westward expansion to the present day. So Rachel, maybe we could have everybody just take a look, and we're not really doing a deep dive. Am I correct, Rachel? We're just sort of getting used to the standards today. And we'd ask everybody to look at maybe grades 5 and 8. How about that? And by the way, just so you know, inquiry is an instructional approach. Many of you know that, but you'll see there's inquiry standards, there's content standards. Probably look at the content standards today. Don't worry about inquiry today, just the content standards for grades 5 and 8, and see what the State Department of Ed is asking students to do at those grades. How's that, Rachel?
Yeah, so what we obviously would like everybody to be familiar with them, but as we're working on establishing resources and publishing them for teachers, we also want to make sure that we're publishing them in a way that makes the most sense and is going to be the most useful for teachers to actually use them. So what we'd kind of like to get a sense of is how we should structure our resources after the standards. So what should we be aligning them with? There's a few different sections. There's course questions for all grade levels. There's course topics, then the inquiry standards and the content standards. So Steve, you just mentioned looking specifically at content standards. So if that's what makes the most sense for us to be aligning the resources that we're publishing to, then great.
I think doing it with inquiry too. I think Rachel with inquiry too, but just I think to get used to the spirit of the standards, maybe just today look at the content.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to share my screen, Steve?
Yeah, and by the way, when it says EGs, you're going to see EGs. Those are not mandated things. EGs are just where you can go in case you need an idea for that standard.
So you'd like me to bring us down
Can
to
you all hear me?
grade, correct?
Yeah.
Can I just offer a suggestion as well as we're going through this exercise? And that is to think about the way that this might intersect with the Red, White, and Blue Schools initiative. I know some of us on this call, I think, to the ways that we can engage kids in schools. There may be the added benefit of thinking through the lens of the Red, White, and Blue Schools. And Steve, if that's a good moment to reflect on that,
For
I don't
those
know if you or Sally might just speak quickly about that for the rest of the group.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can they get Rachel? Can people look at this by themselves, or they have to go through it with you?
No, it's linked from the agenda. So if they have the agenda open, they can get to this easily. And I'll put this direct link into the chat too.
How about if we just take a few minutes, everybody, again, we'd ask you to look at grades 5 and 8. And if you want to take your camera off and just come back on when you're done. If you want to do that. Rachel, I just emailed you a copy of a copy so you won't have to use draft anymore. They're done. I just emailed it to, so you'll have a final copy.
Thank you. I assume it hasn't changed too much.
There's just a few grammatical edits, that's it.
Mhm.
And Rachel, maybe we'll hold the inquiry standard question to the next time. How about that?
Do folks need a few more minutes, or do we want to? Just trying to make sure we're not just all sitting here.
Yeah, I think people are slowly coming back in, so
Mhm.
I don't know if we're quite at half. Look like we've lost a few people too, so, you know. I mean, it may make sense to just pull everybody back in now. Just, you know, to start a conversation.
Yeah, so teachitct.org is, I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar, but we've got some Teach It stuff that's already linked out. So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. We probably are. But definitely so there's a lot of stuff that we have available already. And in the agenda at some point, I have a link out to that. So I have a link out to the resources that have already been collected. And we definitely want to make sure that we're connecting the threads of what we have for resources back to these standards. So that's going to be one of the things that we're going to ask to do later on in the meeting. Danielle?
One thing I know, like when we start sending stuff out to teachers, and especially with the new standards, one thing that I know is like really helpful for some teachers is that if you have the standards and then have like the specific lessons that are tied to the specific standards, then some teachers will be more inclined to use those, especially at that elementary school level, because they know that it will 100% like meet the mark of that standard, especially if they are not like I know like my mom, she teaches sixth grade math now, but she used to teach fourth grade, and she's not a social studies person by any means. And she used to come to me and be like, does this match this? Because she just did like she's a math and science brained person, but elementary school teachers, you know, they teach all subjects. So having those explicitly lined, instead of it just being like a list of resources, so that it's like this lesson meets this standard, this standard, this standard, this standard, which it might seem like maybe repetitive, but for some people it's like extremely helpful because it's like I don't have to dig through. It's like, oh, that hits that. Cool. I can go to that resource, and even if they don't use it, then it gets them into that site.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
That is kind of what our gut instinct was. So it's good to hear from a teacher that that is actually what you need. Perfect.
Could I ask a question, folks? Do you find, is there enough in the standards to allow for various voices to appear? If teachers are using this document, do they have an opportunity? Are various voices appropriately represented, or the opportunity to present various voices? Do you think that that's adequately done in the standards?
I can say as an eighth grade teacher, I love the fact that there are so many examples given, like for instance, like certain standards will give like example, and then there'll be like a list of a variety of different things that teachers can go to. And then there are a variety of different voices to be heard so that teachers can go to those different areas. Like if they're not comfortable or they weren't used to doing that, they now have a launch pad to do that. If they weren't comfortable, that's just my perspective as a classroom teacher.
I think there's a lot of good specific examples there that that were not in the last set of standards. And I think Teach It has a lot of connections to those. I think if we're talking about 250, I think the story of the Tungus in Farmington is a really good story to tell. It's a and I didn't see that in there, but that might be a subject for a Teach It, because they're giving up their land right around the time of they're selling their land right around the time of the revolution and moving west. So it provides a really different look at the revolutionary time period.
So Steve, just looking at the in the agenda and in this section on reviewing the social studies standards, just so I'm sort of clear about what we may come out of this discussion. I mean, you have here, should our resources align with course questions, course topics, inquiry standards, or content standards? So should we be asking ourselves about how we present these resources? Do we use, like, if you're looking at the 8th grade where it says, I guess there are 2 course questions, in terms of aligning resources based on those course questions, or aligning them based on the course topics, or just to make sure.
Right. Yeah, Rachel, first off, I wanted everybody today to look at this just so everybody's aware of what the standards even look like.
Right.
Because I think without this respect, and no disrespect to anybody, there's people that would not even know what they are. So that was part of today's mission. Rachel, can you answer Bilal's question on what you want out of this?
Yeah, so here I'll pop to a different part of the agenda so we can take a look at what we have currently. This is not publicly facing yet, but we have this mock-up of a resources page. So we're going to be separating it out, and we're going to be categorizing it somehow. We want to make sure that we're categorizing it in a way that works for teachers and will actually be useful. So what we can categorize it in lots of different ways, and then we can tie it back to the social studies standards in lots of different ways. It sounds, based on the feedback that I've heard so far, that likely the best thing for teachers is going to be to kind of categorize it by content standards, and tie it back to that versus the inquiry standards or the topics or the questions. That's the sense that I'm getting. Is that what is actually being said?
I'll say this, Rachel, that working with districts and district leaders when they're doing the curriculum, that's what many districts do if they're reforming a curriculum. They look at specific content standards.
I would say I feel like an outsider now because I've been retired for 9 years, but I do think that the approach to teachers in the high school and even the middle school would be different than those in the elementary schools. Because I think that in the high school, where teachers feel as though they have a handle on the content in a way that elementary teachers may not as much, that we need to find a way into the curriculum that they already teach that will have them take a different look. You know, it could be specific examples which are listed here, but I do think a big idea like the paradox of freedom could be a way that you can like shift the gaze of high school and middle school teachers. So I know that's not particularly in the standards, but I think that big idea could help them use the content they already use and think about it in a different way that would relate to America 250.
I think too, kind of building off of that point, Tracy, I think a lot of high school teachers, even though their content is certainly like a lot of them feel very comfortable with what they're teaching because that's their thing, right? I still think even high school teachers benefit from learning new content too. And I think like in addition to your point that like taking things that you already have and kind of looking at them through a new lens are really important and would probably be really appealing to teachers that maybe would think of it as a daunting task. Otherwise, that's kind of a unique thing, but providing them maybe with more just content knowledge resources. Like I think about how badly I, since leaving college, miss learning. And I feel like we sometimes just get stuck in what we know because it's what we're comfortable with and we get busy. And I think if there's a way that we could provide not only ways to make things we already have really special, looking at them from unique perspectives and with that twist, but also providing those new things that maybe people don't know about. Because I would never pretend, even as a US history teacher, that I know every perspective or feel totally comfortable teaching it. That might be something to consider too, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm being clear about that, but I think that's a really important point too.
Yeah, and I think, Abby, if those, I think for this particular project, if those things are local history, I think they're even more powerful.
Everything that you folks are saying, by the way, and you could ask Tony about this too, the social studies standards are desperately trying to meet what you're trying to do. The social studies, I'm less interested, I think we're less interested with this project, America 250, and yes, use what teachers already know, but I think there's many perspectives that the average social studies history teacher doesn't know. Native American perspectives of these revolutionary events and afterwards. Those are the kind of new things that I think that hopefully in a standard-based approach we could address.
And I totally agree. I think those things are in the standards and I love that. I just think that teachers, unless provided with that professional development or content development, because I think a lot of our professional development nowadays revolves around things that aren't necessarily content related, right? And so we miss out on that experience. And so it would become difficult for teachers to do those things, to implement them, to make those actually present in new curriculums without those additional content resources.
And Abby, probably without professional development, a lot of those EGs that you'll see there are meaningless.
Right. Like if you don't know it, and some teachers by just natural curiosity are going to be like, wow, I've never heard of that. And they'll go and do their own research. But the reality of the situation is not every teacher will have the time to do that with everything, or without like being given the time to do it, right? Like by district or through these resources or things that are provided to them, may not be as inclined to go after that.
Is this committee, is part of its responsibility to do professional development or to arrange for it? Or where is that going to come from? Is it going to come from local schools or where is that coming from?
Well, I can, and Rachel, if I'm wrong on this, let me know. Please, there is no, I mean, if we're going to do professional development, it's going to be out of the goodness of our hearts because there is no funding. Is that a correct statement, Rachel? At this point, there's little or no funding for educational activities.
Right. So at this point, we're looking at doing the least kind of the lowest lift type stuff. So pulling together resources, organizing them, making them in a, available in a way that teachers can use them, but probably not going out and providing actual like professional development trainings and things like that. That's probably not on the table right now. Hopefully it will be. But we're looking to definitely get some free resources available.
Rachel, I'm wondering if we could pull off maybe at some point a one-day professional development activity that perhaps is something we could pull off.
Possibly, or maybe in conjunction with a conference.
Yes, yes.
I totally understand that. Obviously, this is not within like budget realm as far as that's concerned. Sometimes I think like practical on the ground when teachers are provided with resources, it's not always enough when it comes to their own understanding of them, or if they're being implemented with fidelity, or to give them the motivation to do it, if that makes sense. So just as a like kind of a thought, I understand if that's not a possible thing. It's just something that I think is really important. And a lot of history teachers that I've spoken to through the years, not only in my district, but just generally speaking, really would be able to thrive on having that content provided to them in a way that allows them to learn and then take it and make it their own.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there could be a wish budget and that so we know what we're talking about? I mean, are we talking about if we did professional development in a way that for instance, Abby is saying, we want teachers to have this opportunity. Like, what are we talking about, Steve? Like, how expensive is it to do professional development? I know it can happen in a conference. It can happen by people going to different school districts. Maybe it could happen through rests. I don't know. Has anyone thought about that structure at all? Or is it just, oh, we don't have any money, too bad, we'll do it through Teach It?
Well, I do think that putting together a packet of materials for teachers is something that we could definitely do. I think
but that's not professional development.
Well, I'm going at this point, there are $0 for education. And again, Rachel, I want to keep going back to you. That's an accurate statement, correct?
You know what? I'm not 100% positive what the actual line by line budget looks like right now. Mike, I don't know if you have any idea on that. Probably not.
I'm just here to talk about teaching.
What about writing a grant? What about grant writing? I mean, what Abby's saying and what Tracy and I know for a fact, because when we go and we do professional development with teachers, is that they wouldn't be doing the stuff that we suggest unless we were there, unless we were helping them, unless we were sharing documents and explaining perhaps how they might use them. So what about a grant writing? Is any grants out there that we could do?
Well, I could tell you that this is slightly inward, but that CT Humanities has some grant lines and I'm told that they would be partial to grants related to America 250. So that do we have so that if that's something that you'd like us to pursue, we'll do that.
Steve, I just want to say something I live like in a fantasy world, okay? But in my opinion, we've got to get museums and historical societies to step up. With these standards, you have just handed people like me and people like Allison a menu for programming. You've got things in there that say students need to know how to look at different historical evidence for different perspectives. And there are historical societies who can provide that just coming from within their own collections so that they're teaching to the standards and they're teaching local history and they're teaching 250 at the same time. And Connecticut Humanities does have grant lines, but guess what? They've been giving us all grants for thousands and thousands of years. And you can't tell me that we don't have ideas and programs and information from exhibits that we've done in the past or plan to do in the future that we can't draw from and do something to give back. I think that if museums and historical societies really care about history and really care about the future and really care about impact, we've got to step up. And I know a lot of us are, but I think that needs to be driven home because we've got the resources. And what are we holding on to them for? If not to use them for everybody, but particularly for teachers and students. And if we can't invite 5 teachers in and let them see what we've got and talk to them about what we know, even in an informal way, then what are we here for? So that's just my fantasy unicorn world where people just step up out of respect for Connecticut Humanities, out of respect for the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies and the Department of Education, because they have given us a gift with these standards. These standards really are beautiful and they give us so much material to work with. So I think we really need to get our colleagues in museums, historical societies really inspired by this and thinking about how they can give back.
Thank you, Sally.
I guess so. In listening, to the conversation, it seems like there are sort of multiple kinds of issues that are on the table here. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to get us to chip away at some of these things, as a subcommittee that we've been, tasked with doing. I was sort of revisiting the subcommittee sort of link to the terms of what the subcommittee is supposed to do. And I think, at this moment, there's what we'd like to do, and then it's like some tasks that are in front of us that I think we need to sort of figure out what that task is that's in front of us. And, when I look at the standards and I look at the content standards, it seems like they're sort of categorized along the lines of the course topics, if I'm looking at that correctly. And so maybe the way to think about it, I mean, we've got a lot of different specific sort of content sort of issues under each course topic. We've got these resources that we collectively discuss, ranging from museums to historical societies to, just a wide range of things. And I guess one question for me is that, and aside from stepping back a little bit from the training and other development that needs to go on with teachers in order to get them to use this, let's try to figure out how to just put this stuff in a framework that we can get it to say, okay, if we're looking at the 8th grade and we know that origins of United States democracy and national identity, what are the resources that we would put under that particular topic and how are they actually organized? Because some of that could be museum stuff, some of that could be, other sort of things. And how do we sort of list that? I feel like we've sort of hit a wall in trying to figure that out because there's so many other things we'd like to see get done that we just don't have the resources right now and probably need a longer conversation to really flesh out more fully. So I want to push us to sort of try to figure that out because I think that's key to sort of building this content that we want to build that teachers will at least be able to go to and take a look at to answer some of those sort of content standard questions that may fall for them as teachers, depending on those grade levels.
And what makes that a little easier is that you realize countless districts are or will be interpreting this. We don't have to do this it's not our job, I don't think, to interpret the whole standards for people. Districts are doing that. There's people in REST that'll do that. What we have to do is figure out, as Bilal is saying, is find out in some rational way how to connect these standards, because every district's going to be using these, how to connect these standards with America 250 and those themes. That's the thing that we really have. We don't have to do the whole standards. We have to find out what's the most intelligent way to create America 250 to these standards and have and focus on the connections.
Yeah. And that's kind of the next step that we're looking to do too. So that's not necessarily something we can all do sitting here in a Zoom meeting staring at each other. But we are going to be asking for some volunteers. It doesn't have to be just 2 volunteers, but there are just 2 roles that we're looking to try to fill right now. Reviewing over the resources that we've already gathered and making sure that the information we have for them is complete, and also assigning the social studies standards to those resources. So there's a couple of like actionable things that that we can definitely do between now and the next committee meeting that will help us kind of start moving forward on some of this stuff. And I know a bunch of folks had to jump off, so I'll definitely send that out in an email to the whole group too, and not everybody was able to join today. So we're definitely going to be looking for a couple of volunteers to help out with some of those things between now and the end of July.
Rachel, there's 2 people on this call as we speak that were very closely involved with writing the standards. And if you want some, I'll offer myself, and I'm guessing if I gave Tony $1, he might be
being volunteered.
I mean, I think the 2 of us could fairly easily match the materials that you have with the standards. But I don't, Tony, what do you think? Would that be a hard task?
I don't think it'd be a hard task. I was also thinking about what Sally had said before about we have so many museums that have such great repositories of information and knowledge and materials and artifacts. And if we can just help, and CCSS, I think, could do this. I don't want to overstep and say, oh, we're going to take the lead on this or something, but we could definitely help museums and cultural organizations see the connections that they have between their, again, between their archives, so to speak, and the standards and the overall themes that are going with America 250. And the reason I think that we can do that is because we just had a wonderful curriculum institute at the New Haven Museum over the last 2 days, where our professional learning coordinator, Jenny Hicla Diaz, who we all know, or I think most of us know anyway, she went in and worked with that museum to see, well, what are the connections between the materials that are in the museum and the standards? And they were able to find connections K through 12, right? Including geography, world history, and they were able to use what was already in the museum's archives. And again, it's the New Haven Museum, which is American-centric and definitely New Haven-centric, and we were able to make lots and lots of connections so that we could create lesson plans that, again, showed the vertical articulation of the standards K-12. So I think there is some way to do it. There just has to be a will, and I think people have to be willing to direct some of their, not all of their, some of their time and resources towards that end, to Sally's point. So thank you.
And Mike, your comment is well taken, that some of these institutions would have to be educated on the standards. That would be a step that would have to take place.
Yeah, we can provide that. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, we can definitely provide that piece.
Right. And I think as somebody who's from the museum world, just understanding the standards and how they work, I think there are, to Sally's point, there are places out there that if you give them a little bit of knowledge, could go a long way. And I know JHD's been doing some great work in specific places, but again, that's like very high touch, right? Like she's going in there and working with 6 or 7 places. So what can we do more generally? And I think there's something, right, Tony, there's something there that I know Sally said give Connecticut Humanities a break, but I think that's something that we'd be interested in figuring out as well with CCSS and other partners to make sure that we're doing it the right way.
I think that's a really critical connection to make. And Mike, I don't want you to take a total break. You could still come up with some money for this, but I think, we've got Teach It, we've got museums with resources. I think there are a lot of things that can be connected. And like I think Tony just said, with a little bit of education, or maybe Mike, you said that, there are museums that could really step up. They just need a little inspiration and direction, and some thinking about how their collections will relate. So I think that's a really important piece.
So perhaps a way to think about our goal is how to organize these resources along the sort of standards in order, because again, we can follow that sort of next step of making those connections. I think is the additional work that occurs after we make these connections ourselves, just as a subcommittee. We make the connections and then we can follow you beyond that to take some of those additional steps, whether it's sort of encouraging folks out in the community to do things specifically connecting to the standards, or for that matter, even the training, that the kind of development that people are sort of thinking about. We've got a few years, to work on that, right, to make it happen before 2026, right? Yeah, 2026, comes along, and then thereafter. One question I did have, I was looking at the sort of way you laid that out, Rachel, about with like basically elementary, junior high, and high school. When I look at the course topics, like it's about 3 for each grade level. They also differ. Is that the best way to make sense of it, is elementary, or is it actual grade level? Because it seems like the sort of course topics and even the content standards sort of change from grade level to grade level. And I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way of organizing. Maybe that's the conversation for Tony and Steve and whatever is a part of the small group to sort of think about, to flesh that out.
Yeah, I mean, we have,
Listen, Allison, were you going to comment?
Oh, I just had a comment kind of based on what we were saying in relation to the Teach It resource and museums kind of getting involved, that, eventually, right, the goal is to get it in the students' hands and have them absorbing all this information. So, it's really important to have these available to teachers, but also to students, because, the teachers aren't going to be able to get to every, available resource. So just if we could, give teachers additional resources that they don't even have to act on those, just to make available to the students, because there's so much self-guided learning as well, especially when they all have access to the internet, 24/7. And so taking those opportunities for self-guided learning as well, because as we know, there's only so much time in the day for teachers. So, in relation to museums and all their collections and everything being digitized as well, I think that's a big opportunity.
Thank you. Rachel, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
I lost it. That's okay. That's okay. But I'm just gonna, I guess, plug along down the agenda a little bit. I'm not gonna pull up the whole action plan, but if anybody wants to go in there and take a look at it, it's adapted from what was submitted to the governor in our 2023 report. So the action plan is what we're actually here to do. So right now we're kind of at the phase where we've been gathering resources and kind of trying to figure out what we want to do with them. And I'm hoping that we're at the point where we're ready to start actually doing something with those resources. So the next steps on the action plan, once we have all these resources organized and published, and that's going to be ongoing, it's not going to end in August or whenever, it'll go probably through this whole few years. But we do need to figure out ways to start sharing that out. So there are places that we already plan to do a lot of outreach to, superintendents, boards of ed, things like that. Libraries, that's something that was specifically called out on the action plan. Education, nonprofits. So some of those things are going to be things that we are going to be looking to do. So we're going to, down the line in the next 6 months or so, we're going to start calling on folks to help with those types of things. So that's kind of a look into the future for you. And then there's been some talk about museums too. So we actually have something specific that we'd like to do with museums beyond what's already been spoken about. So we put together a very, very brief survey, which is also linked from the agenda, and I'll pull this up too. This is number 5 on the agenda. So it's a very brief survey, and it sounds like based on this conversation, we might even be able to add some questions about what kind of resources museums have available and what kind of lessons they can build and what they can do with teachers. But what the survey was initially built for was to find out what kind of field trips they have available. So, oh goodness, I don't know why it's all looking like that. That's a little weird. We'll have to take a look at the title there. Maybe it changed my my language. If anybody else is clicking on this, is it looking the same to you?
It has a weird thing over the hours and the grades.
Yeah, all the characters, all the questions are funny. well, we'll make sure that this looks right. But basically what we're looking to do is send this survey, not when it looks like this, but send this survey out to museums across the state using the Connecticut League of Museums as a kind of a intermediary to get it out to folks.
Rachel, are you looking for field trip opportunities related to America 250 or just any
Yes.
field trip opportunity?
Yep, related to 250. So this is kind of with the intention of building those resources that are available to teachers. So we want to send this out to museums. I'll have to fuss with it a little bit, and I'll send this link out again when I send out the recap of this meeting. But once it's more readable, take a look at it. Think about if there's any questions that are missing that would be helpful for teachers to know. For those that are in the museum space, is there anything that you want to make sure that you're sharing about your field trips and your resources? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because there's no point, but all right, and it looks like the permissions were funny too. So I'll make sure that I get that link sent out, and it'll be the actual viewable link that is readable. It worked this morning, so I'm not sure what's going on now.
Yeah, it told me I didn't have permission to look at it, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. All right, well, we'll fix it.
Is there anything else you wanted to sort of go over, Steve, at all?
No, I think it is, Rachel, is the best way to do the plan is perhaps that Bilal and I do it and we present it to the group for their approval, or is the way to do it with the entire group doing it?
The action plan?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's drafted up, and we can bring it to the group to have everybody approve it. You want
You've
to?
already done it?
Yeah, it's adapted from what already existed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that you have a link to see where it's
Great.
at right now.
Right. So it just may make sense for us to just give it a look over, Steve, point, and then give Rachel and Cindy back some feedback. I know that you and Tony had at least a group of 2 so far, and I can pitch in to help with trying to do some of this organized, but I think we need probably a couple more eyes to put on there. So hopefully, especially eyes from like a museum, for example, one set of eyes, and so maybe a couple other people. I don't know, any other volunteers on here, that would be interested in just sort of helping out to begin to organize these resources.
We can sucker these people in.
Okay. You can reach out later.
We can help.
Okay.
Sally, could I just ask, or anybody that Tracy, Liz, everybody here's worked with museums at some level. How do you think they would take this mission on? Would they, because I would hope that any institution would be eager to share what they've got.
It depends what level that they're at, like if it's an all volunteer organization or not, but it's surprising what all volunteer organizations can do. It all depends on the place. But they're all going to be, I am sure, creating things for the general public, some kind of programming or some kind of small exhibit. And there's no reason why information from that can't be also used in student programming or PD for teachers. I think if they can see that you may be doing this one big project, but it can also have offshoots into other audiences, that might be something that would seem appealing. They just need to be reminded of it sometimes, because you get stuck in your own little square box and you forget to think a little bit more broadly, and it's not always that hard to do it.
I also think the communities, a lot of the communities like West Hartford has their own America 250, and sitting on that committee are people from the schools. So that might be another way that they, and I know the Noah Webster House is sitting on this committee. So it seems to me that that's another way to get information out, or through the local communities that have an America 250 committee with education people and museum people.
Could I just ask another off this topic briefly question? Do you think the standards were, when you looked at them, did they seem to be appropriately great? I mean, were they good for the grade level for those that are in education? Abby, what did you think about that?
I don't know if I feel super comfortable talking about like elementary school because I've had very little experience there, but as far as 8th grade is concerned, certainly.
Thank you.
And Steve, I'm interested that the revolution is actually a topic in both the 5th grade and the 8th grade.
Tony, do you remember what was the thinking on that? Do you remember?
I mean, I think it's good because what you learn in 8th grade should be much
It's
more.
sort of midpoint that the 8th grade teacher, am I correct, Tony? The 8th grade teacher could start with work that the 5th. Do you remember this talk?
Just like Reconstruction is in 8th grade and in high school. I mean, you just can't.
Oh, it is?
With it. Yeah.
Oh.
You just can't get as deep with it in 5th grade, and plus,
yeah,
you need that context. You can't. I mean, you can't end 5th grade in the Revolution, and what are you gonna do? Pick up with the War of 1812, which is basically the Revolution plus. Like, you need to go back and you gotta pick it up. So that was the thinking on that. To look a little bit at the founding as a foundation for 8th grade.
I gotta say, after I read through it, I just couldn't figure out by the time they get to me in their freshman American National Government class, they're like, man, I took that back, years ago in 11th, 10th grade. I don't remember that. And I'm like, geez. You went over a lot of stuff based on that curriculum.
I think what we noticed when we were going through this process is that there's just not enough going on at the earlier levels, right? So by the time they get to the high school level, there's so much recursive learning that we have to go back and, oh, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this, that sometimes we can't get it as deep as we would like to set up for the college level. So again, for folks that are on here, I know there's only 8 of us, but like the elementary level is the spot where we really need to focus on helping students really access this. And that's why we took so much time to build great standards for that grade level. And we've been doing a lot of inroads with elementary educators, especially working with Connecticut Democracy Center. We know they have a great kid governor program, but that's something great, but it's not enough. You know what I mean? 5th grade shouldn't be where it starts.
I end up teasing them in that freshman year. I give them 20 questions off the naturalization test, and most of them I'd have to kick out of the country because they failed the test. So, but yeah.
Well, and as Tony said, the problem with U.S. history being in 5th and 8th in high school is that for that to work, you have to have a robust U.S. history in 5th grade. In some school districts, they do that. In other school districts, to be charitable, not so much. So that's a problem.
Yeah. The students, depending on what school system they come from, I have a number of students who really say what really helped them is when they do like a current events kind of class where they actually debate issues and connect that sort of foundational stuff about civil liberty, civil rights, et cetera, to specific sort of topics. I think it reinforces it in a way that just a dry sort of explanation and not engaging them and actually debating and discussing, and they tend to feel like people are really increasingly afraid for that kind of debate to go on. And that sort of hurts them in terms of their understanding, in terms of the deeper sort of understanding of some of these topics. So. But it looks like we're pushing in on 5. I was like, Steve, maybe you and Rachel can hang back for a second just to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kathy, what's your comment there? That's great.
You're on mute, Kathy.
I'm sorry, I had to duck out for a little bit. I had a call, important call, sorry. I was just looking over I heard Tracy talk about the paradox of slavery and freedom, and Edmund Morgan, who wrote the book American Slavery, American Freedom, was my professor. And that book changed my life when I realized it's not just that these things coexist, it's that they're symbiotic and need one another. And this absolutely changed the way I thought about the world. So I was just a kid from Cincinnati who really never thought about these questions in that way. And I taught that book for a long time until it kind of became just too old, for students at the college level, obviously. And I think students were very moved by that book and its thesis and worked hard to grapple with it. And so I think there are, I think it's a great question to bring up, especially with, the mass incarceration that we saw for so many decades that, we're trying to end now. Because of course, the idea that our freedom somehow depends on a large portion of the population being incapacitated as part of the labor force and as part of the, social forces is, I think something students should really be thinking about, like what our freedom rests on, and that it sometimes rests on the unfreedom of other people. So I'm just all in favor of that.
As always, in conversations like this, to be continued. How about that?
Yes.
And Allison, I hope that you're not, after this meeting, immediately resigning your position. I hope this encouraged you. Welcome to our group. Welcome on board.
Not quite yet. I'll get back to you in a few weeks. We'll see.
All right.
Thank you guys for welcoming me. Thanks.
And can I just publicly say that the word on the street is Sally's an ultimate slave driver of you guys. So you better watch yourself there. She's gonna say it with humor, Alice.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Have a good
everybody.
day.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks.
I think Tracy is still there.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I thought I pushed the right thing.
It makes you double click.
Have a good day. Okay.
Yeah. No, but